This is the last onion that we had from our garden. We planted those, I think, in February the 23rd last year. And this was the last onion. I was going to use all my onions up to make hash brown tomorrow for my family. We serve over 20 people here for Christmas breakfast. Been doing it for years. And I just wanted to show you what happens when this one went to seed and I didn't eat it right away. And that's what happens to them if you don't eat them right away. All the rest of them were perfectly nice onions, and they're all chopped up in the refrigerator. Just thought I'd let you see what it looks like. Picture's worth a lot of words. And this is a 14-pound half a ham that I just took out. That's going to help feed everybody for our Christmas brunch tomorrow. We found that if you're going to feed a whole bunch of people, especially on Christmas morning, you need to get your act together the day before, because it's too much to do when you wake up. I've already diced all the potatoes. They're soaking in water. That's the last of the onions, candy onions that I grew this year. This container of eggs is already salted and peppered and whisked. And the full one and the half one is 20 eggs. If we need more, we can get more. I'm going to cut this off, and then I'm going to show you how to make biscuits. And the phone's ringing. Several people that have asked me that what I do, I give them a recipe, which I gave them for biscuits, and then they asked me if I would do them. Do a video, so I'm going to do it since I've got to make about 60 or 80. We'll probably need 30 tomorrow, and because we're having sausage gravy and biscuits and all the rest of the stuff. And that's my simple recipe. 2 batches. I have a 1 batch, a 2 batch, and a 4 batch. And it's 4 cups of flour, 8 teaspoons of baking powder, a teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of sugar, and 6 tablespoons of butter. Today, we're going to use this. It makes them taste better, but they probably would be healthier with butter. Well, the phone hadn't rang all morning, and it's rang twice while I'm trying to do a minute and a half worth of video. The last ingredient on this is 1.5 to 2 cups of milk. I use 3/4 of that as 2% milk and 1/4 of that amount as half and half. It just makes them taste better. So you have we have this old marble slab we bought years ago. It's great working for bread, with bread. We've got one of these little tools which everybody's used, I'm sure. We have a rolling pin. We have the ingredients. I'm going to put the milk back in the refrigerator until I'm ready for it. And the best thing you can do is get this type cutter for a biscuit. Now this recipe I think will make 38 biscuits, but if you make the big ones it'll be less. It's all in the size, but that serrated, clean, thin edge makes the biscuits rise up and not dome over. Nice little handle on it. And you need a sifter, and Az is older than probably my bride. We've had this a long time. You need some sugar, and you need some flour, and you need some baking powder, and you need some salt, and you need 2 containers, because you need to put this container in there and put half of, or right 3/4 of the flour in there, and then put your salt and baking powder in there, and then fill it up with flour. I think it'll hold maybe 4 cups in this thing. And then sift it out and add the rest of the flour if you have to. And then after you've sifted it out, you need to hold the sifter over this bowl and sift it again. And after that's done, you got to sift it again. You cannot sift flour too much. A few years ago they started saying you don't have to sift our flour. Well, it's been sitting in the packages on the warehouse and in the stores for probably at least weeks, so you know it's compacted. If you want light biscuits and lighter breads, pastries, everything, just sift flour. You cannot sift it too much. So anyway, once I get started, I'll get back to you. By putting the sugar and the salt and baking powder on top of like 3 cups of flour, and you put the other one on it, and this has been sifted 4 times. So all that ingredients is mixed perfectly in the biscuits. You see this cup is 2/3. I measured 4 cups of flour, all-purpose flour, in that sifter, and I scraped the top off with that knife. And by sifting it 4 times, I have 2/3 of a cup more flour. Now you know why bakers weigh their flour. They don't measure it with a cup, they weigh it. So it's always the same amount of flour for the recipes. Back in a bit. Well, another thing is we use these cookie sheets that have a little air layer on them. And it gives you a really even bottom on anything that's cooked on them, and it really works great for biscuits. And the hardest question I've ever had to try to answer people on cooking biscuits is cutting in the shortening, the butter, whatever you're using. I'm going to try to do this. And these little pastry cutters, they really work well. Because see, now that you've sifted this flour 4 or 5 times, you certainly don't want to beat it up cutting in the shortening. And it will stick to this cutter until it gets into small pieces. And I am trying to do it with one hand. I'll be back after I'm finished and show you what it looks like. Hopefully you can see this. It's got little crumbles in it, and that is the shortening. You actually picked it up and sifted through it. You can see the little pieces of shortening. See, like that? Then it'll all be dispersed. And generally I'll take a wooden spoon or something and make a recessed place in the center. And that's where I will put my milk and half and half mixture. There's one little piece of shortening that hasn't been used. If it clings to this very much, just take a knife and scrape it off, and then once you cut through this about 10-20 strokes, it's pretty much all moved around. And then I always scrape the sides because you want all the flour to have a little shortening in it. If you look at this biscuit dough, this is about between 1 1/2 and 1 3/4 cups of liquid. Depends on the flour, the density, the altitude, and a whole lot of things. But you can see right there, it's obviously too wet. That you can touch, but see it sticks to your fingers? You don't need, see how wet that is? So what you want to do is very slowly add a little more flour to it and work that up until it basically will hold itself in a ball. Roughly, you scrape the edges and it won't stick on your fingers. Then when you roll it out on your board to make biscuits, if it's too wet as you need it, you can add a little more flour to it. It shouldn't stick to your fingers. And if you got good dough for good biscuits or good bread, when you touch it after you've done this enough, you will know they're going to be great or they're going to be poor, or maybe you ought to start over. So anyway, I'll get back to you when this is on the board. Alright, once you can touch your dough and it doesn't stick, see, I've got flour from working with this stuff earlier. But once you can touch it with your fingers, you try to turn it around and get everything out the bottom of the bowl. I use this because I can go around here and scrape the sides off with the end of this wooden spatula. But when you get down to the bottom, you really have to just start working the dough and get all the flour at the bottom. And if it all doesn't want to come out, you can just scrape what's a little bit in there out. This dough is still a little bit on the wet side. And I really should have put a little bit on there, which I didn't. But you'll pick all that up as you need it. It's just so everything gets mixed. And it